included sidewalks.
Okay.
So
Mr.
that's
Chair,
a
I can't-
designated pot of money as opposed to necessarily sidewalk money.
Ms.
Mr.
McBride?
Yeah, I
Ms.
can't
McBride.
raise my hand because I'm on the phone.
No, it's fine.
Yes, okay, thank you. Mr. Nehemiah is correct. Those are designated items for neighbor improvement projects. And I would just like to comment that some sidewalks are actually for safety too. So
Yeah.
I don't know about Mr. Malinowski communities, but I've got some dangerous areas that need sidewalks for safety issues. Thank you.
I don't really have any projects in my district, Ms. McBride.
Okay.
Well, that's why I'm informing you of the sidewalks that I know of.
No,
Are
I'm not saying
safety
that we should eliminate all of them. If there's a safety factor, I'm fine with that. But I was just reading it, and it kind of looked like we were building sidewalks to the exclusion of roadways.
Oh, no, these are designated funds based on the ordinance. Thank you.
Other questions or comments?
Referendum.
Thank you, Mr. McBride.
Mr. Jackson,
Yes, Ms. Myers, you
this
recognize?
is very much. Thank you, sir. So I understand that staff recommendation is to refocus the county transportation projects on the element of safety and to sort of drive the referendum amount based on safety questions. Is that correct? I understand that the economic development and traffic considerations are secondary concerns, but I'm just trying to get a handle on what y'all are recommending.
Yes, ma'am, this is Michael Niermeyer. The first pass looking across the board was on safety. So whatever those adjustments that could be made to increase or decrease the number of crashes, fatalities, across the board, across all, particularly the over referendum projects and then the under referendum projects. The next thing we looked at is then increasing capacity.
So on that first one, I would just say, I, like Mr. Malinowski, am very concerned about the safety of the roads, but we've got a whole Department of Transportation for that. And they've recently got a whole lot of money for that. And I would not like to reshift all of these projects based exclusively almost on that analysis, because that's DOT's job. And so I would ask if we have harmonized our, I guess, redirection of funds with what DOT is doing. Because if, for example, and I'm using Crane Creek only because we were just discussing it. If, for example, there are more fatalities on the roads with that absence of a sidewalk in that neighborhood than anywhere else, or disproportionately by comparison to other places, it is more likely than not that there has been some DOT consideration given to that, and reshuffling the deck on our projects, and therefore, obviously, taking some of these that were approved in the referendum that are, lower in terms of what we're calling safety concerns, and shuffling money to those that are higher priorities based on safety concerns, basically supplants some of what the DOT has to do. I mean, I'm all for making the roads safe. I'm not disagreeing with that. So please understand that my comments do not at all go to whether or not safety is the chief priority and a concern, but that's DOT's job. And I thought what we were doing with the penny was supplementing parts of Richland County that might not be high priorities to DOT, and therefore, for our purposes, for the purposes of citizens that we represent, might present opportunities for us to buttress what DOT is doing rather than supplanting it. So I'm a little concerned with how we've now reprioritized to basically do what DOT does, which is to say, well, this is a more dangerous road, so let's put all the money there. I think we got DOT to do that. So I would like the focus to be, I'd support, frankly, looking at number 2, which is looking at the roads that we promised the taxpayers we would repair or widen or augment with bikeways and sidewalks, or where we promised to pave, because those were the things that induced the taxpayers to vote for the projects. And I would say that our focus ought to be what we promised in the referendum and how we can best get as close to that as possible. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Myers. Other questions or comments?
Mr. Chair. Bill
Yes,
Malinowski.
Ms. Malinowski.
Thank you, sir. Page 15 of our agenda, the last paragraph reads, however, as shown in the projects highlighted in red in tables 3.A-D. In my agenda, I see a 3A and a 3B.
Right.
I don't see any Cs or Ds. I see a 4A and a 4B.
Yes.
So, and it refers to 4 widening projects. The only widening projects that I see would be on page 16 that are in dark color toward the bottom, and there's 3 of them. So
Right.
I'd just like some clarification. Am I missing some tables, C and D on 3? And are the 4 widening projects actually 3? And are those the ones referred to in table 4A?
Mm-hmm.
Those are the ones in 4A. But 3 should be a 4.
We're 4. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
I see what you're saying, Bill.
Okay.
Yeah.
All
Other
right.
questions? Thank you.
Well,
Mr. Livingston, I think I have my hand up here.
Yes, Mr. Livingston, go ahead, please, sir.
Mr. Chair, I want to move for the staff recommendation for descoping.
Sure.
Second.
It's been moved in second.
Just let me just quickly speak to that. I
Yes,
just
sir.
think that when I reflect back on what the voters really requested and wanted, that reflects more what the voters are saying rather than looking at the other option 2, because option 2 would mean that there's a possibility that you would fund the projects
When you're done.
to
Halfway.
their rank.
Right.
And what that would mean is there's some you never get to.
Right.
These
Right.
trying to do what's in the best interest of the county on all those projects based on staff recommendations. That's why I prefer that recommendation by staff.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Livingston. Any other discussion?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I wasn't done yet. I had one other thing to add.
Yes, sir. By all means, Ms. Malinowski.
Okay, when you total up the widenings that are in 4A, those 3, it comes to about $60.3 million. And I notice on page 15, it says that will be an estimated, after the descoping, an estimated $56.5 million. So we're kind of like around $4 million off of
Difference.
completing all the projects. And I was wondering, rather than have this remaining balance and use it as a reserve for contingencies, isn't it possible that these 3 projects for widenings couldn't use those funds and get as much out of
That's
that
true.
as we can on a percentage basis for each project?
Good question. Good question, Ms. Mallett. Mr. Nehemiah.
Yeah, so if you follow the D scopes with have an estimated remaining balance of 56 million within the transportation improvement pot of money, which is, all the road improvements. That money, as stated, can be a contingency for some unknowns, but as these scopes are redeveloped, as the projects are realigned to come within the budgetary amount, there's an item that maybe should be included that comes to bear as if we're going through redesigns, that scope could be brought back to council. Council could choose to potentially use additional funds to source that. However, that $55 million as a contingency in the near term is probably very responsible. And as the program moves forward, I believe that probably will get consumed by many of these projects.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comment? Any other discussion?
Yes, Livingston,
Yes,
quick.
sir. No one answered my question, Mr. Jackson, which was, have we spoken with DOT to see if the safety issues are being addressed in the new money they received?
This is Michael Niermeyer. We've spoken to the DOT about our realigned scopes in our monthly meetings. I'm not familiar with what you're referring to as new money they received for safety.
No, not new money they received for safety. DOT got money released, I guess now 2 years ago, for their own transportation projects, which alleviated our, need to put money in malfunction junction. What I'm suggesting is we're saying that we are de-scoping or re-scoping and now reprioritizing to focus more on safety. Well, that is the job of the South Carolina Department of Transportation. So what I'm asking is, rather than on some of these projects still, squeezing and almost breaking the bank, have we spoken with them to see what the priority of the roads that you all are now identifying as safety priorities is from a DOT perspective? Because it's their job to take the road tax money and make roads safe. So it may well be that some of those concerns are better handled by the Department of Transportation, given that that's its prime job.
Thank you, Ms. Myers. Mr. Nehemiah, you want to respond to that? Other than what you already said?
Yes, Mr. Jackson. I believe with the IGA we have with the SCDOT, where Richland County agreed to several projects in name with certain termini. Let me hold on one second. Okay, yeah, so we agreed to several projects listed in our IGA, and within that, we have the ability to modify as we want, as you know, and reprioritize as this body desires, and that has been ranked by this governing body. The agreement is just with certain projects listed in that IGA. So when this list was given to SCDOT, there wasn't any comment, because they really can't, just like malfunction junction, should this body decide not to put money against it, that doesn't have to, and they're not expecting it. Same goes with these widenings, whether it's safety focus or level of service focus. So I'm not sure if that completely answers your question, ma'am. This gives a little bit of background with the agreement between Richland County and DOT. I mean, as we move forward, there's certain approvals that they have to perform anyway before we can do anything. So it's not like they're never going to see any of these agreed upon projects.
So let me give you a specific example. On the Blythewood Road widening, if DOT has determined that there's so many crashes there that they are going to put some of their money on it, and so we had originally scoped it to go to West to Syrup Mill Road. Well, if DOT is now focused on that, if it has high priority for safety, as we are saying, it is likely that they are focused on it, and therefore the rescope, where we are now coming in and saying, oh, we think that based on DOT stats, this is an unsafe road, and we should now focus more of the penny money there instead of otherwise. What I'm suggesting is that's the job of DOT anyway. So maybe what we ought to be focused on is what we were supposed to do in the referendum. And I understand that safety is a consideration of how these roads got chosen, but weighting it more heavily now when there is a full department of the state that does just that, road safety, seems a little bit, at least in my mind, moving away from what it is that we ought to be doing with our referendum money.
Thank you, Ms. Myers. Any additional discussion?
Yes, couple quick questions, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Livingston?
Mr. Nehemiah, do this take into account that 52 million with Broad River Road, or that's still in the pot?
We did not account for that money. Money is still there. It hasn't been deobligated by this body.
Okay. And also too, I'm okay with, and think the staff should check with DOT and say, what do you plan to do anything on this road or whatever? I'm fine, even if we decide to support the de-scoping. But safety is important to me, whether DOT is going to do it or not for Richland County, and that's why the voters voted for the penny. But I think we do need to check, and also too, I think in the future we ought to have actually enough money to complete the whole project. If it's true that we're going to save this $70 million by changing things from bringing in house. We're gonna have, if we're gonna have payback money possibly from to the penny program. So there'll be a whole lot of opportunity and money for a whole lot of other things if these things are true. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Other questions or comments?
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Malinowski?
yeah, can I get some clarification? What is Mr. Livingston referring to when he says 52 million Broad River Road?
Yes, Ms. Malinak, you may recall, we're talking about Crossroads. Remember,
Also,
that was in the transportation penny, the statewide program.
Oh, the malfunction junction area.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
Okay.
right.
Thank you.
Right. If there's no more, any additional discussion? If there's no more discussion, we're ready to vote. Ms. Roberts, would you call for the vote, please?
Yes, sir. Malinowski,
No,
McBride,
Yes.
Livingston,
Yes,
Jackson,
Yes.
Myers.
No.
It passes.
Thank you. I want to thank the staff for the work that they've done. We've sent this back to you so many times over the last 2 years that I've been involved with it. And each time you come back with an effort to try to respond to what we've asked. And even though that target sometimes seems to move and shift, you've done a remarkable job, I believe, in now getting us to a point where it looks like the overwhelming majority, if not all of the projects that were in the referendum, in fact, will be done to almost the design that initially they were just approved. So thank you very much for that. Next on our agenda is the Green Street Phase 2 material testing contract. Mr. Nehemiah?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Jackson. What's before you is to approve the council for award to SNME for the Green Street Geotech material testing contract in the amount of $222,072 with a 10% contingency of $22,072 to cover any potential and unexpected costs associated.
Any questions for Mr. Nehemiah for the committee?
well, I'm sorry, Miss, I'm playing with papers here. The recommendation is for whom?
For S&ME,
SME.
Now, are we comfortable with, my concern was the significant difference in the bid. Did we double check will we double check to make sure they clearly understood what we were requesting, what we needed? Because that's, I don't know when the last time I seen a difference that significant.
yes, sir. We have just the background. We do have 3 companies on our geotech material testing contract. And in this case, we had 2 bidders and they were comparable, but the evaluation had SNME a little bit higher. Because when we evaluate or an evaluation is done, it's agnostic of the price, the cost. Even though I look at that anyway, procurement addresses that portion of it, and the rest of it is done by evaluators. But yeah, there was I believe it was comparable.
Okay, it just said that difference.
Right.
That difference is extremely significant.
Yeah, it is.
But I just want to make sure that.
Other questions of Mr. Nehemiah?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Mr.
Yes,
Jackson?
Mr. Malinowski?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Was this amount, because I didn't, a lot of times, Mr. Nehemiah, we see appraisal amounts from our staff or somebody. And is this amount within that appraisal amount? The authorized amount?
I'm not following you, sir.
A lot of times we'll say that when we get a bid, we'll say this was maybe 10% under what the estimate was, whoever gives us the estimate, whether it's in-house or somebody else that we've hired. Is this within that estimated amount for this project?
That's a good question because we don't have, to my knowledge, data, a lot of data for comparative purposes outside of what existed previously in the program. So as far as it was an independent government estimate, I don't have that information. And I don't know if Ms. Ladishkin is online and she might be able to speak to that.
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Jennifer Ladishkin, the procurement manager. Generally, we get estimates from the engineering team, and procurement does not have an estimate for this. So I'm not sure if one was prepared by the engineering firm or anyone at the transportation department or not. But procurement does not have it.
Okay, so we're
Mr.
going
Chair.
to. So.
Okay,
so
just a
we're-
second, Ms. McBride.
Yeah, just quickly then, so we're being asked to vote on a dollar amount that we don't even know if it is something that's close, under, or over what a engineering estimate would be. Engineering estimate could be 50,000, and we're gonna authorize 200,000+. That's what I'm
Yes,
hearing.
I understand the question, but we do provide the pricing information to the transportation department, where we would expect them to enter into negotiations if they felt that price was not fair and reasonable. So for instance, if it were reversed and we were recommending award to the higher
Right.
amount,
Mhm.
we would enter into negotiations with that vendor.
Thank you.
Ms. McBride, thank
Mr.
you.
Chair.
Ms. McBride.
Yeah. Mr.
Recognize.
Chair, my concern was similar to Mr. Malinowski. The first vendor that we're going to provide the contract, we can no longer do it. The council voted not to do it. Is that correct? Am I on the right?
No, I think that's the next one, I think.
That's the next one.
Okay.
That's
so I'm
yes,
on
ma'am, that's the
wrong
next one. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes,
Okay,
ma'am.
that's what I was,
Okay, yes, ma'am.
okay. All right, thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Other questions? I
It's
see
on
that,
page 40, on page 42.
Miss,
looks like Ms. Newton has joined.
Mr. Chair.
There, Ms. Newton. Okay, I saw her name. I just wanted to welcome her.
I am here. Thank you very much.
All right, all right. Ms. Myers, you recognize.
thank you, sir. I just wanted to ask, like Mr. Livingston, I mean, I love this bid, but I just wanted to be sure that if we vote to accept this, that we write in somewhere that this is with a full acknowledgement of, all the evaluative metrics. Because like Mr. Livingston, it is odd to see this great a disparity in the bids. So I just want to
Yeah.
be sure that they understand and that they
Sure.
didn't make a mistake
Good point. I would
before we
agree.
accept.
I would agree with Ms. Myers, especially considering some of the other bids that I've seen looking at it since the referendum have passed and some of the estimates, and then how far they have jumped in the reverse 4 times what the estimates were. I couldn't agree with you more. This is going,
That's right.
but when you look at some of the other projects that are in your district and other areas, they've quadrupled. And so I agree with you completely.
Let me,
Mr. Nehemiah, you recognize.
Thank you, sir. Could I suggest then SNM, say, change the verbiage to SME for not to exceed amount of $222,072. What that allow, I mean, this is a cap, and this is material testing, geotech and material testing work. So this was an estimate provided by both firms based on the information we provided and how much they think, how much testing they think they will do based on the scope of the construction. So if we add that not to exceed, it definitely caps it, and it could be under. And we've done that. You'll see in the other CE&I contracts coming up before you, the same language, and it should have included that in this briefing document too.
Can I
What
also
was the difference?
say something?
Ms. McBride, I think, or is that Ms. Steele?
Yeah.
Ms. Steele?
Go ahead, Ms. Steele.
Hey, just to clarify on Mr. Malinowski's question, we do not do engineering estimates on these kind of professional services. We typically do those on construction estimates when you have typical line items that you can compare to previous bids with the county and SCDOT for certain line items. For these types of services, when we got their proposals in and got the on-call list, they provided hourly services for their employees, and that's what their cost is based on. They are given the specifications of the project, and they determine how many hours they think it's going to take them to complete the work on the project. And based on the hourly rates they submitted in their proposal, that's where their estimate comes from.
I think that the point that I think it was Ms. Myers made, I think the point is that you want to make sure that even in doing this, that there's a full understanding of the full scope of work that must be done for that bid amount. And that's, so in addition to up to 200,000, Mr. Nehemiah, I think the other part of the point concerning the committee I hear is that we also make sure that they understand that the full scope of the request will be covered in that dollar amount.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson. That's what I was trying to say. You made it
so.
more eloquent.
No, I agree with you. Mr. Nehemiah, you didn't respond, so I'm assuming you got that and you're clear on that.
Yeah, yeah, their understanding of the full scope of work is in that number that is being presented before you.
And the committee is just asking that there be something in writing in that contract which verifies that.
Yes, sir, Mr. Jackson. We'll make sure we
So
have that
should be.
articulated in
That's all.
writing.
Thank you. Any additional discussion? Chair will entertain a motion on this item then.
To approve, Mr. Chair.
Been moved.
Me.
Been moved.
I'll second it.
Been moved and seconded.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Ms. Roberts, would you call for the vote, please?
Yes, sir. Malinowski,
Yes.
McBride,
Yes.
Livingston,
Yes.
Jackson,
Yes.
Myers.
Yes.
It passes.
Motion passed. Thank you very much. Next on our agenda is number 6, the Green Street Phase 3 C&I contract. Mr. Nehemiah.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Jackson. Before you is the, as you said, the C&I contract required for Green Street Phase 2. 8 vendors on our on-call sheet. We had 6 respond, competitive field. As a briefing document states, subsequent to council's decision on April 21st, staff is recommending CECS as the for award of a contract to provide C&I services for the remainder of Green Street Phase 2. I will add an addendum to that. As you've seen in the pricing data, they appear significantly higher. Once council made its decision on April 21st, we did go back to Parish and Partners, that's CCS, back to Parish and Partners and renegotiated the price and brought it down. And I was trying to find that in front of me. I believe the new price that they provided. And of course, I don't have it. Do you,
I've got it.
one of you?
It's Jennifer.
Okay, sure.
$815,820.44.
Okay.
So I'd like to amend it to the 815,844 with a 10% contingency.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Ms. McBride, you're recognized.
can we, and this is just a legal question, can we legally negotiate that price with the firm selected Parish and Partners without giving the other companies the opportunity?
I see Mr. Farr is on the line from legal. Ms. Farr, are you able to respond to that, sir?
I'm here. Can y'all hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I apologize. I've got the meeting going, but I was on the phone with someone else. Can you restate the question, please?
Ms.
Okay.
McBride.
We have elected Parish and Partners, and we went back to them to see if they could reduce the price. I'm wondering if we can legally do that without looking at the other companies, without going back to them.
Mr. Chair, can I raise a point of order?
Yes, sir. Mr. Livingston, you recognize?
We're not in executive session, right?
No, we're not, sir.
Concerned about how far we get into
Yeah, good point.
the matter.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. That's a good one.
Good point, though.
Before we move on this, it may mean we need to just somehow, if we're not sure about it, move it to council with a recommendation, get the legal advice, but at least get all our questions answered. But I don't want to be careful about us getting into too much legal.
Absolutely. Would the committee be comfortable with moving this to the full council without a recommendation from the committee and then allowing that discussion to take place in executive session, which would then bring us out to vote on it at that time?
I would make a motion to that effect, Mr. Chair.
Is there a second?
And I second it.
Second. Any
Second.
additional discussion on that motion? Hearing none, Ms. Roberts, would you call for the vote, please?
Yes, sir. Malinowski,
Yes.
McBride,
Yes.
Livingston,
Yes.
Jackson,
Yes.
Myers,
Ms. Myers? You may have gotten disconnected, I'm sure.
I'm sorry. I was muted. I voted yes.
Okay, thank
Sorry.
you. Thank you, Ms. Myers.
Yes, sir.
You talk for yourself, Ms. Myers.
That motion,
Muted myself. Yes, sir.
that motion passes. Thank you very much. Thank you for raising that issue, Ms. McBride, and helping us with that response, Mr. Livingston. Next on our agenda is the Clemson Road C&I contract. Mr. Nehemiah.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson. Similar to the last one, though, we had 8 vendors, 7 responded. The top evaluated vendor that the staff is recommending is Michael Baker International with a not to exceed amount of $390,894 with an additional 10% contingency of $39,089.40.
so when this meeting is over, because this is the last item. Okay, so when the meeting is over, I just.
Robert, can you?
Ms. Roberts, you need to mute your mic for me, please. Thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Nehemiah.
Now, as I said, staff recommends award of the contract to Michael Baker International in the amount specified in the briefing document.
Yes, sir.
Is the top
I see it.
evaluated provider.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir, Mr. Malinowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Nehemiah, we got some information in an email that came from you, and it was listed as confidential, and it had various prices from all these vendors for each one of these items we're discussing now. Yet the prices that you're giving us are nowhere near what the prices were listed in those in that email, in those attachments. Are those not accurate, or is there something I'm missing here?
I'm not sure what you're looking at, sir. Let me
either.
Dig back to the pricing data.
All right, I'm looking at an email that was sent to me by the clerk's office yesterday at 2:33 p.m. and it says, attached, please find confidential documents for tomorrow's transportation ad hoc committee meeting. And there are 3 attachments. One is for item number 5, one for item number 6, and one for item number 7.
All right.
And when you open those up, it lists the companies that offered a bid. It's got a ranking, a company name, and an amount. And the amounts are way, way higher than what you're giving us here.
Can I jump in on this?
Yes, you may, Allison.
For this one, I did negotiate the cost down with Michael Baker. And when I say negotiated costs, I didn't actually get them to lower their rates. We went in and took out some things that were not necessary. For example, because it has taken so long between when the bids were open and us having the committee meeting, there are a couple of extra months they added in that we now don't need. So I had them take out a couple of months. They also listed 2 months for a closeout process, and we only needed 1 month. So I negotiated for them to remove unnecessary things we now no longer need.
Okay.
So that lowered the price $200,000 to $300,000.
Wow.
But Ms. Steele, even with the amounts that you're giving us, the last item and this item, there are still other individuals here, other companies that were considerably less. Now, maybe this one wasn't considerably, I think the previous one was. And I guess I'm going to go back to what we said before, and that is, can this take, but I'd make a motion, we send this forward and get the legal opinion when we get to council, no recommendation.
And I understand that, but I think Jennifer may be able to weigh in on this, because when we review these professional services, we do not rate them at all based on cost. So it's not like we're being unfair going to this company and getting them to lower their costs.
Ms. Steele, I hate to interrupt you, but you broke up there and we missed a whole lot of what you said.
Oh, I'm sorry. I think Jennifer Ladishkin may be able to provide some insight on this. When we review these proposals, these professional services, we do not evaluate them based on cost at all. So when we rank them and we go with the number one and then go to them to see if they can lower their prices, it's not really being unfair to the rest of the companies, because again, we did not select them based on their price.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, this is
Yeah.
Jennifer.
Yeah, I remember.
Allison is correct. These are requests for proposal. So because of the engineering services, their award is not based on price, solely on price. And so we establish the ranking of the offerers, and then we enter into negotiations with the highest ranked offerer. And so that's what Allison has done in this case, and negotiated the cost for Michael Baker down. And that's also why there could be such a disparity between what is being provided for a cost from one contract or one firm versus another. It's all about their interpretation of the services that are required.
And also, this is the same negotiation we did with the Green Street project.
Any other questions?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I still have concern on this, because while you can rank the offerers based on qualifications, you're telling, what I'm hearing is that you've got items 1 through 5 are listed, and I am now applying, and we can take price out of it, but all of a sudden there's only items 1 through 3 in there, and I'm the only one that knows about it. And so of course, if you negotiated with me, it would come down, but there may have been something on one of the other ones that also could have been advantageous to them if they knew there were only 3 items instead of 5 items to make their offer on. I think we need to discuss this further in detail.
I agree with Mr. Malinowski.
So do I. So, Mr. Malinowski, did you make your substitute motion?
Well, yeah, I said I would make a motion, just as was done with the last one, to forward it with no recommendation, and we can get legal advice at that point at council.
If that's acceptable to the chair, I'm willing to second it.
Yeah, I'm okay. Yes, it's been moved in second. Is any additional discussion? I would like to say, I thought I heard the folks describe this in a different fashion in terms of qualifications and not lowest cost for the performance of a project or delivering a service. And so for that reason, I don't see it the same, but I certainly will recognize those who see it differently and will go with the will of the committee. It's been moved in second. Any additional discussion? Hearing none, Ms. Roberts, would you call for the vote, please?
Yes, sir. Malinowski,
Yes.
McBride,
Yes.
Livingston,
Yes.
Jackson,
Yes.
Myers.
Yes.
It passed.
Motion passes. Thank you very much. Before we adjourn, that's the next item on our agenda. Let me thank all the committee members for our first attempt today. I thought it went extremely well doing this meeting by Zoom call, and I'm sure it's given our chair of our next committee meeting that's coming up at 2:30 some good pointers of how she'll be able to do that as successfully as well. So thank you, each of you who are part of this and made this a success, and hopefully we look forward to this transportation project getting back on track and moving forward as we have worked so hard to keep it going. Chair will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second,
I'll second it.
thank you. Call for the vote, Ms. Roberts.
Malinowski,
He's muting, but I can read his lips. He said yes.
Yes.
McBride,
Yes.
Livingston,
Yes.
Jackson,
Yes.
Myers.
Yes, and thank you, colleagues and Mr. Jackson and staff. Good meeting.
Yes, thank
Absolutely.
you,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Jackson.
Thank you all so much. Meeting's adjourned. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.